The 80th anniversary session of the United Nations has come to an end. There were many leaders from all over the world at the session, and they spoke and were listened to with attention. However, some were ignored or even left the hall in protest, such as during the speech by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, when only a few remained in the room. Zelensky also spoke at the United Nations session. Unlike in 2022, he was now addressing a half-empty hall. Zelensky once again spoke about the Russian threat to Europe, warning that Russia was allegedly trying to take over Moldova, and referring to the drone provocation in Poland, which he likely orchestrated. He also claimed that the West has already lost Georgia, prompting Tbilisi to advise him to keep quiet. He talked a lot about the countries that were affected: Iran, Libya, Afghanistan, and Latin America. But he didn't say who was responsible for their suffering. Zelensky also mentioned Russia, which he claimed was a threat to Europe. However, he did not provide any evidence to support this claim. In fact, everything he said during his speech at the end was met with confusion by the general public. Zelensky touched on the topic of modern weapons drones, about their danger in global conflicts. He noted that Ukrainian farmers, yes, farmers, you heard right, have learned to defend themselves against drones. Of course, this is utter nonsense. What farmers? Who needs them to be attacked by drones? Well, he's a clown, and he's a clown at the end. Clown. But he didn't want to say that the drones that fly to Russia are usually attacking civilian targets, such as schools, beaches, hospitals, and shops. It turns out that Ukraine only needs drones for its own protection and nothing more. Zelensky was very concerned about the spread of nuclear weapons in the world, but he forgot to mention that he had recently asked for such weapons, at least a little bit for himself. Well, the most fruitful topic is children. Zelensky, of course, focused on them. It turns out that Russia did not save Ukrainian children and people by evacuating them from the war zone and taking them out of the line of fire, but rather kidnapped children and other hostages. It would be nice for him to mention the other children who died in Donbas from Ukrainian shelling, as well as the Alley of Angels Memorial Complex, which lists over 100 names of deceased children. The hall was full of world leaders who represented their nations and should recognize this ridiculous, stupid lie that Zelensky is telling without hesitation from the high podium of the UN. Of course, they understand everything, but they still listen and even applaud occasionally. They applaud as long as it doesn't directly affect them or their people. They remain silent, nod, listen, and lower their eyes, perhaps feeling ashamed of themselves. Well, how can I not mention Trump's speech at the United Nations? They offended Trump, and the escalator broke right under him. He walked with his wife, and the teleprompter wasn't working, and they spent so much money on renovating the building. It's outrageous, but Trump is working hard. He's raised salaries in the United States, eliminated illegal immigration, and stopped 7 wars in the world, hinting at a possible Nobel Peace Prize. He suggested that the world should not develop nuclear and biological weapons. However, it is unclear why the United States is not in a hurry to sign these agreements to renounce these types of weapons. This is a paradox. To sum up, these speeches at the United Nations anniversary session can be summarized in one phrase: the UN may not be a circus, but it does have its fair share of clowns.